Welcome back to Morrowind. It's Morrowind time once again. We're going to join Pandoro, the resident vault hunter. I'm going to do something that I've seen some people do. I'm going to rank vaults that are found within Morrowind. When I pick my skills, I go for unarmored and spear as two of the most important. I also go for security because a lot of these vaults are going to be locked and I need a way to open them. The best way to open them without a key is to just crack the lock. So while I fight Foreign Gilneth, I am going to explain what a vault is. I go onto the UESP wiki, I type the word vault into the search bar, and then go. You can see here there are 3,092 results. However, this is for every Elder Scrolls game. So in order to narrow it down, I'm just going to show more results per page, Control F, and type in Morrowind. This gives me a much easier time finding the vaults that I can actually access in Morrowind and ignore the rest. In all, I found 14 vaults to rank, but before I get to looting these vaults, I need to do a little bit of preliminary looting, grab a few items to make this game a little bit faster. One of these items being the Boots of Blinding Speed held onto by Pouny near Caldera, and I also happened to find an enchanted spear while looting through the barrels and crates in Balmora. Additionally, I wanted to run over to Aldredania early on in order to loot the Bitter Cup and utilize its benefits. Fighting the Bitter Cup's Guardian was very difficult, but having a spear can make it pretty easy. There's a spot that you can stand where the skeleton will stand below you. If you're standing a little bit further up to the left, the skeleton can actually reach you with the touch spell sometimes, and that's bad. So make sure you're standing where the skeleton is basically under you the whole time, and you can just stand there and stab at him until he eventually expires, or re-expires, because he's already dead, but you need to make him re-dead because he's undead, whatever. Anyway, I chose to try to lower my intelligence and get my endurance up to 100 so that I don't have to worry about health at all. I also leveled myself up to level 20 since that's the level of most ordinators in the game, and I will be fighting a lot of ordinators, so I wanted to have a fair ground to fight them on. And I grab one final item. The skeleton key is in the possession of Gentleman Jim Stacy and Vivek. It's the best lockpick in the game. So let's start going through these. The first vault I'm showing is the Redoran Ancestral Vault. This is located in the canal works of Redoran Canton in Vivek, and has some of the most pathetic loot available. You'll notice I said this is the first vault I showed, not the first vault I looted. I actually started with the big three, the Great House vaults, but we'll see those a lot later on. I decided to show them in groups in order of the worst average going up to the best average. So this being the worst vault, and the counterpart that you'll see shortly was the third worst vault, but I grouped them together since they were really bad. So this is all the stuff I found out of the Redoran Ancestral Tomb. The most interesting item I found were corpus weepings, and then there were a couple random silver weapons and some money. Not much else that was interesting. Next, we'll look at the Hlaalu Ancestral Vaults. Like the Redoran Ancestral Vaults, you can find this vault in the Hlaalu Canton in Vivek, and there's actually a small group of enemies here. You'll see that I attempted this fight a couple times. One of the enemies has a crossbow, and that's pretty annoying to fight against when somebody else is also slamming a great axe into you. That great axe being one of the better pieces of loot from here. It was a fiend battle axe worth 9,000 gold, and the rest of the loot in here, pretty much all of it, is just a bunch of garbage. However, another interesting find was because these enemies were classified as smugglers, a lot of the containers were classified as smuggler containers, and thus rolled on that loot table. So I actually wound up finding 26 samples of moon sugar. Additionally, there were 4 ash statues, which not worth very much, but interesting. Hlaalu Ancestral Tomb, a little bit better than the Redoran Ancestral Tomb, quite majorly better actually, but still, compared to a lot of these other vaults we're going to talk about, this was small potatoes. With those two ancestral vaults out of the way, I couldn't find Telvanni ancestral vaults, but I mean, that's not too surprising. We're going to move on to the Dunmer Stronghold vaults. The first being the Vault of Erode, located in Kogarun. Now, Kogarun itself has a lot of very valuable items in it. This is where you can find a pair of Daedric gauntlets, you find the Shadow Shield, you find, even the House Dagoth Cup is worth 500 gold, and every single Dagoth enemy in the Stronghold has an amulet worth 2,000 gold. Unfortunately, this Vault of Erode missed the memo. There is one Dagoth enemy in this area, an Ascended Sleeper, so they have the amulet, but that's pretty much the only valuable thing in here. There's some exquisite clothes, and some potions, and a Telvanni Dust Adept helmet, but there's really nothing to write home about here. The Tower of Dusk and Dawn at Ghostgate has to be one of the best Dunmer strongholds in the game, though not really classified as one by the game standard. What else would it be? It is a fortress that is secured by the Dunmer, therefore a Dunmer stronghold. I lumped these two together as well because they're right next to each other. I put all the loot that I found from both locations in the same location because I feel like they're sort of two halves in the same coin. However, I did split up their monetary value just so we could compare them against one another. You'll see again, the Ordinators are keen to attack me. That is because at one point before I looted this vault, I did wear an Endural helm and talk to an Ordinator to make Ordinators hostile towards me. It just makes looting this stuff a lot easier. And I decided that anything within the vault's confines is fair game. That means enemies that attack me, I can take their items, and it counts towards the total, meaning Ordinator sets, which are pretty valuable. The armor is about 21.8 thousand, and then they also have an ebony mace that's worth 12,000 gold. So each Ordinator set is about 33,000 gold, a little bit more, 34,000-ish, which even then, the Tower of Dusk edged out just a little bit higher than the Tower of Dawn. The Tower of Dawn being where the Ordinators guard. I think there were just more glass weapons and ebony items inside the Tower of Dusk. There was also a really cool, unique named amulet that had a unique graphic and everything in the Tower of Dusk, but its effect was kind of not that great. But it was still cool, because it kind of looked like a dragon's fang or something like that. After that, we can move on to the One Dwemer Vault. This is the Mudan Central Vault in Mudan Grotto. This Mudan Grotto is roughly southeast of Ebonheart, maybe a little bit south-southeast. It's also a little bit east-southeast of Vivec, since Vivec and Ebonheart are quite close to each other. It houses a large complex of dwarven ruins inside, being a lost dwarven fortress of some kind. But on the top floor is a Dwemer Centurion. The Centurion itself has a key on its body when you defeat it, and the key opens a cabinet that has the Dragonbone Cuirass, the most valuable item here, counting for 180,000 out of the 184,000. It's also an artifact, so that's pretty cool. It gives the user 100% fire resistance. There's also a unique potion in here called a Potion of Heroism. Next we have Daedric Vaults. First are the Lost Vaults of Anud-Nabia. Now, the entrance to Anud-Nabia isn't exactly where one might expect the entrance to a Daedric ruin would be. You have to access this ruin through an adjacent ancestral tomb. You actually go here for a quest if you go through the Imperial Cult quest line, because there is another artifact here. The artifact in question here being the Skull Crusher. It is a unique mace that has 15 pounds of feather to offset its 15 pounds of weight. So essentially it is a weightless weapon when equipped. There's also a Daedric Face of Terror here, along with several skill books, most of them being skill books for Armorer. When all said and done, there's quite a hefty amount of value here at 77,000 gold. Next is the Sunken Vault in Ashal Mawia. Ashal Mawia is not very far away from Kuul. There is, yet again, a quest that takes you here. This time I think it's a House Redoran quest, maybe a Fighters Guild quest. I'm not sure. It's one or the other. You have to come here and fight the enemy within the vault. It is a dark elf man wearing almost an entire set of ebony armor, and ebony armor is quite valuable. So this is quite the boon for us. Fighting this enemy is a little bit difficult. He summons a greater Bonewalker, so I try to get him with a sneak attack to fight faster, which does work, and I managed to only get my strength damaged a little bit. There are some items that are in the top of the gallery, and they need to be collected with levitation. So there were a few Daedric weapons, one held by the NPC there himself, and most of an ebony set of armor. A couple interesting scrolls as well, like a scroll of Windwalker and some potions. We're getting pretty high up now with this next one. This next one is a vault within the ruins of Ibur-dad. This is a cave that's sort of off of a Daedric shrine that is its own small area of Daedric ruins. In the back of the cave, there is a small area behind a locked door that the wiki kept telling me was a vault. If the wiki told me it was a vault, it was a vault. I didn't loot the rest of the stuff in Ibur-dad, but I did loot anything that was found behind that door, including the golden saint guarding the room and the specters that attacked me when looting the cursed ancient daggers. This is the location of another artifact, the third one we've seen so far on the list, Eidolon's Ward. Eidolon's Ward itself is worth 200,000 gold, this being worth more than several of the vaults we've talked about in their entirety, so this one gets ranked pretty high in the end. Altogether, there were those 8 cursed ancient daggers, a few Daedric weapons, a Daedric Face of Inspiration, and that artifact that I mentioned, Eidolon's Ward. Now, if I rolled some different items on the Golden Saint table for the Golden Saint, like instead of having an Endural shield, maybe I got a Daedric Tower shield, the value would have been skewed even higher. The presence of the Golden Saint adds a lot of randomness to exactly how valuable this vault would be to plunder, so take that with you. I decided to take a look at one vault, quote unquote, from each expansion. These were not listed as vaults on the wiki, but I wanted to include them anyway, because otherwise I might not have the ability to show anything from the 2 expansions. But first I went to Mournhold. I know the location of the Daedric Left Pauldron within the Tribunal expansion. There normally isn't one other than the one that is worn by Diviath Fear to loot in the base game, but you have to go through a lot of the main story here before you can access it. So that's what I do. I just go through. No big deal. But by the time you give the Balazar's Maze Band back to Almalexia, wait around a little bit, and then head to the plaza, you can head into the Dwemer ruins below Mournhold, find Nornen-dur, which is an even older Daedric structure, and head up to the Wailing Delve. I made a mistake when I was looting through this Wailing Delve because apparently there's also a Daedric Cuirass. I was not able to find the Daedric Cuirass, so my initial number was a little bit wrong, and also it's not in the pile of loot at the end when I show it off. It is a little bit difficult to sort through all this stuff, but there is a cool enchanted Dwemer battle axe, and a Daedric Left Pauldron, and allegedly the Daedric Cuirass. Those are the most interesting pieces of loot from that. In Solstheim, I decided to loot Gildenhull Barrow. Normally, this is a barrow that you gain access to after completing a quest, but there's nothing stopping you from just running over to the barrow itself and looting it for everything it's worth, except for a lock level 100 door. So, as long as you can crack a lock that big, you can come in here at any time. It's fairly lightly guarded. There's a few Reeklings on the island, but if you know where the door is, you can generally jump into the barrow before the Reeklings trouble you that much. There's a lot of piles of gold just kind of lining the barrow. A couple glass pieces of equipment, a couple ebony pieces of equipment, some Stalrim even. Stalrim is pretty valuable. They're worth about 200 gold per sample. I did not have the Nordic pickaxe, so I could not grab these items. But the most interesting loot were, as I mentioned, the ebony and glass items looted here, and just a few gems and potions. Moving on from here, we have the Great House Vaults. These are the best of the best, the top 3. At number 3 is the Hlalu Vault. You have to kill this NPC that I'm attacking right now in order to get the key and enter. And now this is the first vault that I looted, so my spear skill isn't as good as it is later on. Also notice that I'm using that enchanted spear that I found near the beginning of the game rather than the ebony spear that you've seen me use after I was here, because I actually find the ebony spear here. But because these ordinators are here as well, this is where I turn all ordinators hostile towards me, just to make looting these vaults a lot easier. And when I decide, hey, well, these ordinators were also in the vault, so technically pieces of loot that I can loot. There's just a ton of enchanted miscellaneous gear through here, a ton of gems, a ton of gold, wonderful amounts of glass and ebony items, and this is the worst of the 3. The Hlalu Vault itself had 424,000 gold worth of items in it, and was the worst of the 3 great vaults. Next, we're looking at the Telvanni Vault. Once again, it is in the Telvanni canton of Vivec. This is one of the coolest vaults around because of the way it works. When you initially enter the vault, it actually throws you into this little closet with 2 storm atronachs and a chest that usually has like 7 gold in it, so just a totally worthless room. And there were a couple of interesting things here. First of all, was a named ebony staff that had an enchantment on it, and there were several Daedric weapons that can be found here. Not to mention the ebony and glass items. There was also Greed, a unique named spear with 10 points of spell absorption being the most interesting effect on it, but it had a couple other interesting effects as well, and several fiend items. I mentioned before when I was in the Hlalu Ancestral Vault, the Fiend Battle Axe. It summons a Daedric Battle Axe for you that you can use. Similarly, the Fiend Armor that you can find in the Telvanni Vault. When you use them, they give you pieces of bound armor for a short time. Pretty useful for early game players. However, actually accessing the Telvanni Vault is a bit dangerous, mostly because of those storm atronachs in the false vault. And the best vault, the Redoran Vault. This is just because of the sheer number of things that's in this vault. The vault itself is actually split into 2 different pieces. There's an upper vault and a lower vault, and they're in the same room. They require 2 different keys to open, which is a bit frustrating, but that's okay. I have the skeleton key after all. This vault also had the most ordinators guarding it. Both Hlalu and Telvanni had a total of 5 ordinators that I had to eliminate before I could access the gooey center of the vault, whereas Redoran had 8. So that's already an extra 100,000 worth of stuff just from ordinators. So in all, they were actually pretty close. It was just the number of ordinators around that kind of skewed the value up. But that's okay, because the Ordinator's gear is gear in the vault, and that's fair game. The Redoran Vault also had several, and I mean more than the other vaults, had a lot of ebony items. One of the things that helped the value of the Telvanni and the Hlalu vaults is the fact that there were Daedric items in them. They're worth a lot, but to make up for it, House Redoran's vault had like 4 extra ebony weapons for each Daedric weapon that was in the other vault. So just an absolute mother load of ebony items to sift through. A lot of potions. There was also a table with food and dining utensils, so I tried to emulate that by having the table filled with food. Yeah, the Redoran Vault had tons of stuff in it, so that one was pretty cool. So let's recap. At number 14, we have the Redoran Ancestral Tomb. Really not very good. 13, Vault of Erode and Kulgurun. Again, not very exciting, although the amulet from Dagoth, whatever, in there, was worth more than the entirety of Redoran Ancestral Tomb stuff. 12, we have Hlalu Ancestral Tomb, mainly just the Fiend Axe. 11, the Lost Vaults of Anudnabia, being mainly rested on the ebony armor there. No. 11, we have the Lost Vaults of Anudnabia, most of the value coming from Skullcrusher. 10 is Gildenhall Barrow, most of the value coming from just like the 6 glass swords in there. Nornen-dur coming in at number 9 with all its Daedric stuff. 8, and then 7, Tower of Dawn and Tower of Dusk. 6, Ashal Mawia, the Sunken Vaults. 5, Mudan Vault with the Dragonbone Cuirass. 4, Ibur-dad with the Eidolon's Ward. 3, the Hlalu Vault. Number 2, the Telvanni Vault. And number 1, the Redoran Vault. Also, here's the total gold value of all of these vaults, coming in at 2,713,008 gold pieces. That's a lot of gold. Nearly 3 million gold just from these 14 vaults. I mean, one of them only having a value of like 1,700. Redoran Ancestral Vault was really not even worth going into, but it said vault, so it was on the list. If I were to rank how easy these vaults were to access, unfortunately most of them had a lock level 100 door to access them somewhere. So unless you have keys and you're doing this early game, it's not going to be very easy to access these rooms. One could either power level alteration and pack a unlock level 100 lock spell, and that would help a lot. You can do that pretty early on. You can do that at like level 2 pretty consistently if you maximize for it. But Mudan Grotto is really rough. I found myself running out of air a lot in there, and I had very high endurance and very low carry weight, so my swimming should have been pretty efficient, but I kept running out of breath. So a low-level character going into Mudan Grotto, probably not the best idea. I would definitely just stick to the main 3 because they're the easiest to find in the Great House Cantons of Vivec, and as you can see, they had the highest value. Maybe I would also recommend the Vault of Ibur-dad because the Eidolon's Ward item is very worth the trouble getting. It has an excellent healing enchantment on it that can trivialize encounters if you need some health. Even the House Hlalu Ancestral Vaults, having the 4 enemies that you need to defeat in order to loot the place, can be pretty difficult because those 4 enemies are a little bit strong for who they are. There is actually a Morag Tong contract on one of them. I think it might be the guy with the Daedric Battle Axe, or the Fiend Battle Axe, excuse me. But I'm not really sure. It's one of the enemies there, though. I think it's something Bemis, but I can't recall for certain. Anyway, that's going to do it for this video. I hope you enjoyed watching. This is a little bit different from what I've normally been doing. I normally try to do like a walkthrough of some kind, but I thought it would be interesting to put my 2 cents in on this topic, that being the vaults. I see a lot of people do the big 3, but I know there were a lot more vaults than just those, so I wanted to showcase them here as best I could. But that's going to be it for now. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to leave a like and subscribe, I'd appreciate that. The subscribe would also help you follow along with the content that I make, if you're interested. I normally stream twice a week, on Monday and Tuesday, since those are days that I don't work. And I'd love to see you there, if you're interested. I've been playing a lot of Oblivion Remaster, but I'm starting to run out of steam for that game. We'll see how much longer I actually enjoy it. However, there's still a lot of mods to break into in that game, so that might be the next step. Anyway, once again, thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one in a little while here. Goodbye.